I'm Lucy A. McLaren, and I'm going to be doing a short reading from my upcoming Gothic fantasy, Echoes of the EtherStone. I'm going to be reading from the prologue, which is from the perspective of the Scrubber's Stalker, which is the serial killer depicted on the front cover, who is haunting the city of Alpenside in which the story is set. Trigger warning for descriptions of murder, gore, and swearing. I had been watching her for a while before I approached her. The stench of the docks was heavy in my nostrils, fish and filth, the rotten odour of the decaying streets of the workers' district, while the cobblestones were slick beneath my feet. The street lamps had been lit what felt like hours ago, and I was sheltered in a doorway hidden from the flickering gas flame of the nearest one. Daisy stood beneath her usual street lamp on the opposite side of the street, a place I had observed her parade herself many times before. I wanted to bide my time before striking. She leaned against the tall metal pole, doing her best to seem appealing. Her skinny ankles were bared and her modest cleavage was pushed up within her hand-me-down corset. Despite this, she was unable to hide the occasional shiver when a chill breeze gusted down the street. It may also have been due to the fact that as a young woman barely past her 16th year, she couldn't possibly know much about the pleasure she purportedly offered to passers-by who glanced her way. I knew she was the one, had the moment I first laid eyes on her. I knew too what must be done. I simply had to commit. For weeks now the voice in my head had been urging me on, imparting the urgency of my mission. My saviour, it said, why do you hesitate? What is one life, one sacrifice to maintain the sanctity of my reign? What is one life compared to my protection over this beloved city of yours, over the very kingdom of Estra? As the days passed, the voice, he, I should say, had grown louder and louder until it was all I could do not to scream. I had to act. Only then would he leave me in peace. He had promised. My palm, slick with sweat, rested on the hilt of the knife sheathed at my waist. As I drew near, she turned to me and smiled, her pale blue eyes flitting up my body, lingering on my hooded face. There was no recognition in her expression as she tilted a bare, pale shoulder towards me. Momentarily forgetting myself, there was a stirring of excitement in my loins. She certainly was not unattractive, with her slim waist, full lips, and long chestnut locks. "Looking for a good time, mister?" she asked, her voice slurring slightly. Intoxicated, my lip curled with disgust, even as I knew alcohol was likely an attempt at self-medicating against her condition. "How much?" I asked. Her eyes gleamed with the reflected lamplight as she looked me up and down once more. "A gold crown." I bit my tongue, knowing this price to be far too high, yet fully aware I would reclaim my coin once the deed was done, if I so wished. "Of course," I said, reaching into the leather purse at my belt. I retrieved the crown and held it up, letting it glint in the light. She gasped. Given her background, I doubted she'd ever seen a gold crown before. Daisy stepped forward, lifting her chin and preferring a dirty palm. "Payment up front." I admired her tenacity and held the coin out for her to take. She reached for it hesitantly, as though expecting it to be snatched away. Once it was in her grasp, she stowed it in a shabby, limp purse tied to the tattered belt at her waist. "Well then, sir," she said, running her finger down my front, "where do you want me?" She gave what she must have believed to be an alluring smile. It wasn't bad, not really. I was just impatient to be at my work, to be done and away from this wretched place. I peered round, pointing behind her to a darkened alley. "There." She winked. "A shy boy, I see." "I'm not a boy," I snapped. Seeing a glimmer of fear in her eyes, I said more gently, "I simply do not like to be on display." I leaned in close to her ear. Who I lay with is my business and no one else's. My words had the desired effect and she appeared to relax. "Cool, sir." She took my hand and led me to the alley. Around us the streets were quiet. The scrubbers were tucked away in their meagre, run-down homes or cradling a cup of ether ale in the local drinking hole. Either way, it worked in my favour. The light from the lamps faded as we moved away from them. The alley was damp and cold, but was sheltered. Here I could carry out my work in peace. As she turned to me, I rushed forward, pressing her against the wall. I will admit there was an air of arousal being so close to her body, malnourished as it was. A woman's scent has always driven me to a kind of madness, yet I had been unable to resist its allure thus far in my life. Now would be no exception. My mind would stay focused. "You're an eager one, ain't you?" she said huskily. She pulled at my cloak, causing the hood to fall and let out a gasp. "Oh, I know you. You're—" I pressed my mouth to hers to stop her next words. Shit. She wasn't supposed to see my face. Somehow my task was made harder by her knowing who was taking her life. When I pulled back, she grinned. "Well, I'd have never suspected one such as you'd be down here. You was awful proud, arrogant even, when you was at my house." She gave an awkward smile. "Not my words, you understand, just what my ma said." She tugged at my belt, undoing it with deft fingers, and slid her hand inside my trousers. "But it seems you weren't too proud to come back for what you wanted." "My saviour, remember your mission," the voice in my mind said. Yes, father, the servant of the Ether Mother must die. I gritted my teeth against the waves of pleasure building at Daisy's touch. "Stop," I said sharply. Her eyes snapped up to meet mine. "My lord?" I exhaled, wishing she hadn't said that, hadn't acknowledged my title, or that she knew me. I had to be done with this. I leaned in to kiss her neck, and she moaned. As I distracted her, I slipped my knife from its sheath, a fine silver blade with a gold-gilt handle, a sacred blade passed down in my family. In one deft movement I lifted it up, stepping back and slashing at her neck. Her eyes widened, a moment of shock as she registered what was happening, before her hands flew up to stem the gush of blood. But something was wrong. There wasn't enough blood. I hadn't hit the artery as planned. She could survive this. Fuck. In that split second of hesitation, she turned to flee. "No!" I cried, leaping for her. "Help me!" she called out, though it came out weak and wheezy. Hot, burning rage coursed through me at her audacity to attempt escape. "Whore!" I spat, dragging her backwards into the alley. "Where is your Ether Mother now?" Her only response was a gurgled whimper. I held her from behind, keeping her in place as I stabbed at her throat. I had to be sure this time. My lips peeled back in a grimace, and I entered a trance-like state, my arm moving back and forth, stabbing and slashing, blood splattering my face and clothing. Eventually, I came back to myself. She was limp, silent, dead. I let her slump to the ground, her body thudding dully against the cobblestones. Looking down at her, at the blood pooling around her head, my breaths came hard and fast. I was sickened by the sight of what I had done. The knife was still in my hand, and I held it up, watching the dark red liquid trickling down the blade. I wanted to laugh and vomit simultaneously. I did the first, and a strangely high-pitched sound burst from me, echoing in the oppressive darkness of the alley. I glanced down at the whore's body once more. "Daisy," I whispered. A sense of relief flooded through me as I took in the ragged, torn flesh of her neck, at the blood trickling from her wounds. There could be no judgment of what I had done here. I was a loyal servant of the Ether Father. I was the saviour of Alpinside. And that was the opening prologue to my Gothic fantasy, Echoes of the EtherStone, which is releasing on the 7th of October from Owl Talyn Press. It's available for pre-order now, so do check the links down below to pre-order. And do get in touch with me if you do pre-order it, because there's free character art postcards that will be sent out for anyone that pre-orders.